This is Joe Biden, the President of the United States. On August 10th, 2022, Biden gave remarks in the East Room of the White House.
Actually, I just want to say a number. 0.
0% brain activity?
Our economy had 0% inflation.
Oh.
In the month of July. 0%.
So Biden is referring to the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which is the average change in prices paid by consumers. The CPI takes a snapshot of the price of food, energy, commodities, and services. And in July, the average, when considering the totality of all of these items, came out to 0.0%.
The result, zero inflation last month.
Not quite. In July, the price of food at home is up 1.1%, including coffee, which rose 3.5%. Juices rose 2.3%. Cereals and bakery products rose 1.8%. Meats, poultry, fish, and eggs rose 0.5%, and fruits and vegetables also increased 0.5%. But the big driver of this so-called zero inflation is the fact that the price of energy commodities decreased. For example, in May and June, the price of gasoline rose an average of 15.3%, bringing the price of gasoline to an all-time record high of $5 a gallon. But during the month of July, the price of gasoline decreased by 7.7%. And for your information, gas prices have been dropping because they have been so high. Let me explain. When gas prices are high, that drives down demand. And when demand goes down, prices go down. And consider that prices are still way too high and are currently hovering around $4 a gallon, which is still $1.61 higher than when Biden took office.
Our Energy Information Administration has put out their short-term energy outlook, and they are projecting at the moment that the price in the fourth quarter of this year per gallon will probably drop to about $3.78.
So Jennifer Granholm, the Energy Secretary, is admitting that gas prices are going to remain high. She's saying that they're going to maybe drop to an average of $3.78, but currently the price is nearly $3.96. So that's a difference of a whopping 18 cents between now and the end of the year. But great job, Granholm. You're doing God's work. Anyway, the morning the July CPI data was released, Axios published an article with the headline, "Inflation drops to zero in July due to falling gas prices," and this was pointed out on Varney & Company.
I saw a headline this morning, just a few minutes ago, in Axios, It says, "Inflation goes to zero in July because gas prices are down." Inflation at zero. I mean, how misleading can you get?
My goodness, never judge a book by its cover, you might say. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. They're talking about the monthly change in the CPI.
Yeah.
But the average person really wants to look at the year-over-year increase, and 8.5% still hurts, though it's down a bit from June's 9.1.
I'll bet you the president picks up on that. Zero inflation in July.
And of course, Stuart Varney was on the mark. That's how predictable Joe Biden is with his bullshit.
Today, we received news that our economy had 0% inflation. 0%.
But as with every single thing that comes out of Joe Biden's face hole, that's a lie. Because inflation over the last 12 months is still at near record highs. Since July 2021, the price of coffee has risen 20.3%. Juices are up 12.9%. Breakfast cereal up 16.8%. Flour up 22.7%. Bread up 13.7%. Meats, poultry, fish, and eggs up 10.9%. And fruits and vegetables up 9.3%. But you know, zero inflation, America.
0% inflation.
And then there's the issue of the White House spin regarding the July jobs report.
Today, we received another outstanding jobs report. 528,000 jobs were added just last month to this country's employment. 528,000 jobs.
And this outstanding report is supposed to be proof that we're not in a recession.
I'll say this, the strong labor market is what we're looking at, right? That tells us, because of the strong labor market and that being in one of the many economic indicators, shows us that we are not in a recession, that we are in a transition.
But what Biden and his diversity hire would never tell you is that from June to July, the number of full-time jobs actually decreased by 71,000, and that the number of part-time jobs increased by 384,000. 303,000 of those are considered involuntary part-time. In other words, those workers were forced to take part-time jobs because of reasons like having their hours reduced, poor business conditions at their full-time job, or because workers just can't find suitable full-time jobs. You know, things that happen during a recession. But Karine Jean-Pierre is only going to spin the jobs numbers in the most surface way possible and hope that no one notices.
But at the same time, we do have a strong labor market. And that indicator tells us a lot about the trajectory of the economy. It does not show that we're in a recession. And I'm not just me, not just folks in the White House are saying this. You're hearing this also from economists.
You're mostly hearing this from Biden-aligned economists. You know, the ones that conveniently changed the definition of the word recession.
What a recession really means is a broad-based contraction in the economy. And even if that number is negative, we are not in a recession now.
But you're splitting hairs. I mean, if the technical definition is 2 quarters of contraction, you're saying that's not a recession?
That's not the
No?
That's not the technical definition.
The New York Times put it this way today. To paraphrase an old political adage, if you're explaining how recession calls are made, you're losing.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we've gotten into a technical discussion about what constitutes a recession. And I think, look, bringing the facts to the table is something that we as economic advisors have to do.
Bringing facts to the table is what they should be doing. But instead, they're following Joe Biden's lead.
We choose truth over facts. And so, folks.
Next, let's talk about the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, a massive $740 billion monstrosity of a spending bill that was able to pass in the Senate thanks to budget reconciliation, which essentially means that Democrats only needed 50 senators to vote for it. So thanks, Georgia, you morons. And the Democrats put out propaganda touting the benefits of spending hundreds of billions of dollars. But notice what this graphic is missing: a bullet point that says inflation reduction. And that's because the Inflation Reduction Act isn't actually designed to lower inflation. I know you're shocked. In a letter to Senator Lindsey Graham, the Congressional Budget Office answered the following question: how would enacting the bill affect inflation in 2022 and 2023? In calendar year 2022, enacting the bill would have a negligible effect on inflation in the CBO's assessment. And for clarity, negligible means so small or unimportant as to not be worth considering, or insignificant. In calendar year 2023, inflation would probably be between 0.1 percentage point lower and 0.1 percentage point higher under the bill than it would be under current law. So a spending bill called the Inflation Reduction Act is only going to maybe lower inflation by 0.1% for the entire year of 2023. And no one is buying this.
It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. But the Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, said that there would be a negligible impact on inflation this year and barely impact inflation at all next year. I mean, isn't it almost Orwellian? How can you call it Inflation Reduction Act when the nonpartisan experts say it's not going to?
So I appreciate that. I appreciate the question.
No, she doesn't. Anyway, let's look at the massive benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act. First, the claim that the bill is going to lower healthcare costs and prescription drug costs. The bill spends $64 billion to expand Obamacare subsidies, originally expanded under the so-called American Rescue Plan, a $1.9 trillion spending bill which, as you know, massively increased inflation. I mean, whatever, it's just money. But what about lower prescription drug costs? Well, phase 1 of this plan is for the Department of Health and Human Services to be able to negotiate prices for 10 Medicare Part D medications. The prices they negotiate will take effect in 2026. In phase 2, HHS would negotiate 15 Part D drugs, and those prices would take effect in 2027. Part D medications include anti-seizure drugs, antidepressants, antipsychotics, cancer drugs, HIV/AIDS drugs, and immunosuppressants, which are taken after you get an organ transplant. So, which 25 Part D medications are going to be targeted? Couldn't tell you. And we don't know how much Americans are going to save because we don't know the price of those meds because we don't know which meds are going to be targeted. And that's the same with phase 3 and 4, where a total of 35 Part B or D medications go on the negotiation table. And these price changes will take effect in 2028 and 2029. But again, out of those 35 medications, we have no idea which ones will be negotiated. But don't worry, America, you're gonna save so much money. And according to Karine Jean-Pierre, Americans are going to feel it right away, even though that's not remotely true.
Those are things specifically that the Americans are going to feel right away. When it comes to lowering prescription drugs, that'll be earlier in the year, next year.
Again, HHS is only negotiating prices for 10 Part D medications in the first phase. That means that most Americans aren't going to see any savings, period, let alone see them next year. So Karine Jean-Pierre is either lying or completely stupid. Good point.
But look, this is a big...
I just want to be clear. I don't think people should be expecting on their drug prices that's going to kick in.
Well, they're going to put the first 10 pieces, the first 10 medication out there, right, to start the process so they can start negotiating the lowering costs. But the point that I'm making is that this is an investment...
That's 2026.
How does this chick have a job? Well, you know why.
That's 2026.
No.
For the first 10 and then the additional ones phasing into 2029?
Well, here's the point that I'm making here is they're going to see energy costs, utility bills, that's going to come down.
So first, Karine Jean-Pierre claims that Americans are going to feel the effect of lower prescription costs immediately. Brianna Keeler called her out on it, and then Karine's response is, the point I'm trying to make is about energy costs and utility bills. If Karine Jean-Pierre was any more incompetent, her last name would be Biden. Next, Democrats claim that the bill is going to lower energy costs. Well, according to Resources for the Future, a left-leaning nonprofit / Washington, D.C. lobbyist group that focuses on the environment and energy, claims that the average household will experience approximately $170 to $220 in annual savings from smaller electricity bills and reductions in the costs of goods and services over the next decade. In other words, Americans are going to save broadly $14 to $18 a month on electricity and goods and services. How, you ask? Because the federal government is going to spend $369 billion of your tax dollars on green energy investment over the next decade. You gotta spend money to save money, I guess. Next, Democrats claim that the Inflation Reduction Act is going to reduce the federal deficit. One of the benefits of the bill is that it's going to lower the deficit by $300 billion over a 10-year period. However, this deficit reduction isn't happening anytime soon. According to an article by the AP, Douglas Holtz-Eakin, a former director of the CBO, noted that the lower deficits won't kick in until 5 years from now and won't be very large over the next decade, considering the size of the economy, and stated $30 billion a year in a $21 trillion economy isn't going to move the needle. Next, make the largest investment to combat climate change in US history.
Mother Earth. Mother Earth gets angry from time to time, and this legislation will help us address all of that.
Right. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, the Inflation Reduction Act contains $369 billion in spending on green energy investment. And a large portion of it goes to tax credits and rebates. Here's the Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm to explain.
This first of all, immediately, people will be able to lower the fuel costs in their home. There's a 30% tax credit that you can claim in 2022 for installing energy efficient windows, heat pumps, energy efficient appliances. That is right away.
So if you want to lower your energy costs, all you gotta do is spend the money on energy efficient windows. Average house has 10 windows, $1,000 a piece. It's 10 grand, no big deal. Installation not included. Heat pump's gonna cost you like 6 grand, 10 grand, who knows? Energy efficient appliances has a stovetop, cooktop, fridge, washer, dryer, dishwasher, ceiling fans. Feel like I'm missing something.
And on top of that, of course, if citizens want to install solar panels on their roofs so that they can generate their own power, that's another 30% tax credit.
Right, the solar thing. That's gonna cost you another 15 to 25 grand. We accept all major credit cards and offer financing. But if you're one of the 45 million households in the United States that rents their home or apartment, doing things like installing solar panels or energy efficient windows does not apply to you.
And of course, there's the tax credits that are at the dealership for the automotive sector, for electric vehicles. So, and if you install an electric vehicle charging station in your home, you can also get a tax credit.
Want that sweet, sweet tax credit? Just spend $130,000 on an electric vehicle and install a $4,500 electric charging station. Again, it's just money, right? The Fed will print more if we need it. They know what they're doing. However, it's not that simple. Currently, there is a requirement that the battery needs to be made up of 40% of critical minerals that are sourced here in North America. But according to the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, of the 72 EV models currently available for purchase, 70% of those are automatically ineligible. And over the next few years, the sourcing requirements get stricter. In 2024, it needs to be 50%, in 2025, 60%, and so on. And the Alliance for Automotive Innovation points out that while the $7,500 credit might exist on paper, no vehicles will qualify for this purchase incentive over the next few years. This part of the bill, it's just a frickin' mess. Joe Biden constantly rants about buying American, yet the lithium, cobalt, nickel, and graphite that's needed for these batteries come from other countries like China, Russia, South Africa, and Chile. And consider that 70% of the global supply of cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And according to the New York Times, the Chinese have a stake in the majority of the country's 19 cobalt producing mines. Did someone say national security risk? While we work to unlock supplies of critical minerals and ramp up battery production at home, we can't currently meet the demand for these materials on our own. That's the reality. Partnerships with friends and allies in North America and beyond will be necessary. And if you think that the same Democrats who are against fossil fuel drilling and coal mining are totally going to be okay with corporations ripping up places like Minnesota, Alaska, and California to mine for critical materials, then you're out of touch with reality. And finally, make corporations pay their fair share in taxes. First, the bill earmarks $45.6 billion to the IRS for tax enforcement activities, legal and litigation support, criminal investigation, including investigative technology, and digital asset monitoring and compliance activities. In other words, you're getting audited. Congratulations, America. And don't forget the $80 billion in funding for the IRS to hire 87,000 new agents, including special agents that are required to carry a firearm and be willing to use deadly force if necessary. Wow, that's comforting. And these armed agents are surely going to help enforce the 15% minimum tax on large corporations who make over $1 billion in income. This starts in 2023. But you know what happens when you raise taxes on corporations? they'll have less money to invest in their business, infrastructure, etc., and that leads to pay cuts, reduced hours, layoffs, and charging more for their goods and services. And when prices rise and everything costs more, well, there's a word for that: inflation. So when the prescription medication your family needs actually goes up in price, when inflation rises exponentially, when you're forced to take a second job because you can't afford food and housing, because the Fed is printing billions more to throw at Mother Earth, just remember the following when you head to the ballot box in November.
Every Republican in the Congress voted against the bill. Every single Republican.
And with that, thanks for watching, sharing, and slamming that like button. Check out these videos that you likely missed, and as always, be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. And I hope to see you next time. If there is next time.